Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about a convict in Bilkis Bano's case who was seen sharing a stage at a government event in Gujarat. We also talk about the contentious right to health bill of Rajasthan. But first, we talk about Assam's recent crackdown on child marriage in the state. Back in January, Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma announced an unprecedented crackdown on child marriage. In the weeks that followed, more than 3,000 people were arrested in connection with the Assam government's campaign against child marriage. At the time, the opposition had accused the state government of targeting minority communities, an allegation that the chief minister rejected quite publicly in the state assembly last week. But the records of the arrests made so far show that 6 out of every 10 arrested in the state are Muslim, with 10 districts in Lower Assam accounting for the bulk of the arrests. And what's important to note is that in a majority of these cases, the accused have already been granted bail. The Indian Express's Sukrita Baruah joins us in this segment to go over some of the data and what it means. So Sukrita, before we get into the data, can you briefly talk about the recent crackdown on child marriage in Assam?
Right. So this crackdown was announced by Assam's Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma late January. So the reason that was given for this is that it's a fact that Assam has a really high maternal mortality rate and infant mortality rate. So the government's position was that a big factor in this is the widespread prevalence of child marriage and of underage girls getting pregnant, which also is reflected in various health surveys. So the government's approach to this has been a punitive crackdown, which entailed mass arrests of people across the state. So this went underway on February 3rd, and within the span of the first 24 hours itself, more than 2,000 people were arrested across the state. So you can imagine the scale of this exercise. So according to the data that we have for the first month, so after the first day it kind of slowed down a little bit. So throughout the course of February, what we know is that around 3,098 people were arrested in the span of 1 month itself.
Right. And one of the biggest criticisms posed by the opposition was that the crackdown targeted people from minority communities. This was a concern the chief minister had even addressed in the state assembly recently. But you actually went through the records of these arrests from 35 police districts as well as the commissionerate in Guwahati. What did the data tell you?
Right. So first off, what I want to say is that one of the first things that people asked when this crackdown was announced, is this communal in nature? Is it communal in intent? Is it communal in its implementation? So the State Legislative Assembly in Assam has been taking place this month. And it's been something that's been brought up by opposition MLAs who've been accusing the government, saying that this crackdown has been communal in nature. And this was refuted by the Chief Minister in Assembly. And he said that, no, it's not that way. He said that even though the reality of child marriage is that it is more prevalent in Muslim majority districts, that's what he said, the government has tried to keep the arrests more or less even. So the ratio that he cited was 55% Muslims and 45% Hindus. So that's a submission that the Chief Minister made in Assembly. Subsequently, I looked at police records. So these were submitted in Assembly in response to a question asked by an MLA, and it had details of more than 3,000 such arrests that took place in the month of February. So going through that, I counted 3,141 people who are named as arrested in these records. And what I found was that 1,955 of these were Muslims. So that comes up to around 62%. While the remaining 1,186 are from Hindu and other communities, right? Like Assam has a lot of tribal communities as well. So that came up to 37.76%. So the ratio that we found looking at it was more along the lines of 62 to 37.
Okay, and from a regional perspective, Sukrita, could you tell us which districts saw the most arrests?
Right, so the 5 districts with the highest number of arrests are Nagaon, Hojai, Dhubri, Buxa and Borpeta. So these are all districts which are concentrated in Lower Assam and in Central Assam. And 4 out of these 5 are Muslim majority districts in the state. So in the last census that was conducted in 2011, there are 9 districts in Assam which were categorized as Muslim majority, and 4 of them are in the top 5 in terms of arrests. And the 10 districts of Lower Assam, on my analysis, I found that they account for 40% of these arrests. So Lower Assam is that region of the state where a lot of the Bengali origin Muslim community of Assam are concentrated. On the other hand, the 5 districts which have the lowest number of arrests, and these include single digits. So in Jorhat, we just had 8 arrests in the month of February. The 5 districts which have the lowest number of arrests are all concentrated in Upper Assam, excluding West Karbi Anglong. That's a tribal majority district. So Upper Assam is that part of the state which is associated with, and I quote, indigenous Assamese population. So, you can see a certain trend in terms of geography here.
Okay, and another interesting data point that you talked about is the number of cases where bail has already been granted. It seems like quite a few of the people arrested for child marriage have already received bail. Why is that?
So the reason that the question of bail in this crackdown becomes an important one is because of the widespread invocation of the POCSO Act, which is the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. So what the Chief Minister had announced is that in all cases in which a man marries a girl between the ages of 14 to 18, he will be arrested. He will be booked under the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. And in cases where the bride was below 14 years of age, they'll be booked under POCSO. So the POCSO is, of course, a stringent act. The offences under it are non-bailable offences. So that is why the question of bail became an important one. So when we looked at the data of the cases in which arrests had been made, we found that 97% of these cases had sections of POCSO. So that's almost all the cases, right, with POCSO sections. Despite the widespread invocation of POCSO, we found that actually till the end of February itself, bail had been given in to 62% of all the arrested people.
And Sukrita, what are the sort of considerations that the court takes into account while granting bail in these POCSO cases? And is it common for bail to be granted in cases like these?
So, despite the fact that offences under POCSO are non-bailable offences, people who have studied bail and POCSO have found that, in cases where there's a question of consensual sex or marriage involved in POCSO cases, courts have generally been more forthcoming in terms of bail. So I had spoken to Shruti Ramakrishnan. So she's a legal researcher with a focus on the POCSO law. So she said that in their studies across 4 states, in more than 80% of such cases where there was a romantic angle or where the question of consensual sex was involved, courts granted bail in more than 80% of such cases in their observation. So it's not anomaly, the fact that we have 62% of those arrested getting bail in Assam in these cases.
And next we talk about Shailesh Bhatt, a convict in the Bilkis Bano case. A few years ago, Bhatt along with 10 others was sentenced to life for the gang rape of Bilkis Bano and the murder of 14 of her family members during the 2002 Gujarat riots. But all of them were freed last year, and in response, Bilkis filed a plea in the Supreme Court challenging their premature release. Now, the Supreme Court is yet to take a decision regarding this plea. But in the meantime, Bhatt has been in the news again. Last week, he was part of a ceremony in which he shared the stage with BJP MP Jaswant Singh Bhabor and his brother MLA Shailesh Bhabor. This ceremony was for the Gujarat Water Supply and Sewerage Board, and after the news broke that Bhatt was part of it, many politicians, civil society members and Bilkis's close aides expressed concerns over it. To understand why he was present at a government event and his closeness to the Bhabor brothers, my colleague Utsa Sarmin speaks to the Indian Express's Aditi Raja.
So Aditi, to begin with, do we know why Bhatt was invited to this government event and why he shared the stage with these 2 BJP leaders?
So there has been no clarity on who actually invited Bhatt to the event. we first got the pictures and the press release regarding the event from the Dahod District Information Department on Saturday evening. And so therefore we first tried to reach out to the Dahod District Administration to ask them who had invited this convict to a government event. But the Dahod District Administration said that they did not know, since the event was organized by the Gujarat Water Supply and Sewage Board. And so we also tried to reach out to the officer in charge of the GWSSB in Dahod. That night, he told us that the list of invitees was not prepared by the Gujarat Water Supply Department, but by the Taluka Panchayat. We also tried to reach out to the local BJP leaders in the district, who said that it was too micro event held in a village and the district unit of the party was not involved. So they had no knowledge about it. And then we also tried to reach out to Shailesh Bhabor, to Jaswant Singh Bhabor. When we spoke to Shailesh Bhabor, he said that he was so busy at the event, since he was the MLA, that he did not see who was sitting next to him. Jaswant Singh did not actually comment after hearing the question, and he did not respond to text messages seeking his response either. So at this point, we don't know who invited him, but official sources of the water supply department have said that it was the Taluka Panchayat that has extended invitations, but that could not be confirmed.
Okay, so no one is sure who invited him. But did Bhatt himself give any reason for being there?
So since we wanted an absolute confirmation of what Shailesh Bhatt was doing at the event and who asked him to sit on the dais, we actually called him up directly. He confirmed that he was at the event, and he only said that it was a public event that he was attending and he would not like to make any further comments. When I still asked him, who invited you to sit on the dais, he offered no comment, and he said that it was a public event and I was there at a public event. So I think there has been no clarity on who actually must have prepared a list of invitations of dignitaries to be seated on the dais. There was no invitation given out of the event as such, where we could actually even check whose names were there on the list of dignitaries. So as of now, the question of who invited him still remains unanswered.
And Aditi, what is the reason that the Bhabur brothers would share a stage with a convicted person whose case is still under judicial consideration?
So why would Bhabors be sharing a stage with one of the convicts? I think to answer that question, we would need to go back a bit into the history. So Shailesh Bhatt, in 2002, when he was accused of the crime and arrested in the case, he was a member of the Dahod BJP's district unit and at a very respectable position as a BJP leader. He is known to have groomed a lot of BJP leaders who are currently elected from Dahod. So Jaswant Singh Bhabor was very close to Shailesh Bhatt as a young leader at that time. He was later elected as the MLA of Limkheda, and then the seat went to his brother, who contested in his place when he was elected as MP of Dahod. So for the Bhabor brothers, Shailesh Bhatt is someone they look up to. And the fact is that he does enjoy a lot of respect from local leaders, from the community there. And the fact that the convicts have been granted remission, as we have also reported earlier, has been seen as a sort of vindications of sort by the people who were supporting the accused even at that time. They have always claimed that they are victims of politics and they were actually not involved in the case, although they were convicted by the court. So it is also not surprising to see him share the stage with the Bhabor brothers. But what is surprising is that it was a government department that had organized the event. Even when he was out on parole previously once, he was seen at a party event with the Bhabor brothers while being out on parole. So at this point in time, he is actually a convict who has been granted remission. And therefore, for the locals or even for people who support him, there is no case against him anymore. So in their minds, he is a free person who is free to be seen at, a public place. What is only a question that needs to be answered is who invited him to be on the dais with the two elected representatives at an event organized by the department of the government.
Right, and after this news broke, many politicians, opposition leaders, and civil society members expressed their outrage. In fact, Bilkis's close aides also expressed their dismay over what happened. Talk to us about that.
Yes, there has been an outrage over the presence of Shailesh Bhatt at this event, a government event, given that Bilkis Bano's petition in the Supreme Court is under consideration. There have been opposition leaders who have been, taking to social media and expressing their objection to the presence of Shailesh Bhatt alongside the two BJP elected representatives, and also asking questions about the fact that he was given a space on the stage at a government event. Bilkis's close aides and family have also expressed anguish over his presence at a government event and, the kind of the VIP treatment that they say he has received at this government event despite being a convict released on remission. So by that logic, the family has also questioned why was he seen at the stage. But at this point, there has been no clarity or a statement from the government department on who actually invited him.
And in the end, we talk about Rajasthan's new health bill, which generated large-scale controversies across the state. Last week, the Rajasthan Assembly passed the Right to Health Bill, under which residents of the state will have the right to free healthcare in all public and some private hospitals. But the bill received strong criticism, not only from the opposition BJP, but also the doctors in the state. In fact, thousands of them came out to the streets to protest against the bill. In fact, so many doctors were part of these protests that the patient care in the state started to get affected. But despite this, the Ashok Gehlot-led Congress government last week went ahead and passed the bill, which they say will bring in a Rajasthan model of public health. To understand why this bill is so contentious, here's Utsa again, speaking to the Indian Express's Hamza Khan, who reports from Rajasthan for the paper.
So Hamza, can you first tell us what this Right to Health bill talks about?
So the Right to Health Bill gives every resident of Rajasthan the right to avail free OPD and IPD services at all public health facilities, which have this facility, of course. And according to the bill, free healthcare services, including consultation, drugs, diagnostics, emergency transport procedure, etc., will be provided at the all public health institutions and certain private facilities which are impaneled and which will be brought under the ambit of the government as part of the rules which will be specified now, which will, the government will come up with the rules now. And of course, it depends on the private health facilities too, if they want to be impaneled with the government. And another important part or clause of the bill is that all residents will be entitled to emergency treatment and care for accidental emergency without paying any fee or charges in advance.
Yeah, and the bill also talks about the kind of information people would be able to get from hospitals. Can you tell us about that part?
Yeah, so there is, for example, an important bit in the bill which says that if a patient wishes to leave, then they will have to be given treatment summary in case of a patient leaving healthcare establishment against a medical advice. Because the government says that there are times when the private hospitals, they sometimes don't give the treatment summary to the patients. They insist that, you stay at our hospital and, basically to earn more money. That's what the allegation is. Second is, sometimes the patients want to seek a second opinion. For example, you have a patient who's admitted at a private health facility for the last, 5 or 6 days, and there is no improvement in the patient's health. So of course, the family panics and they want to consult another doctor outside the hospital where the patient is admitted. But then the hospital, sometimes they don't give the treatment record of the patient. So another clause in the bill is that the patients and the families will have the right to obtain treatment records and information from the treating healthcare establishments to seek second opinion from other healthcare professional or healthcare establishment. So these are again, it's an important clause in the bill.
Right, and when we talk about private hospitals, you said that the bill will be applicable to certain private hospitals. So does that mean these hospitals will have a choice whether they want to opt for the provisions of the bill or not?
So right now, there are certain schemes which are already being given, certain government schemes such as Chiranjeevi and the Rajasthan government health scheme, which are provided by private hospitals as well, which are impaneled with the government. So these schemes are already being executed through government and private health facilities. But the government wants to bring more hospitals under the ambit of these free schemes. So for that, of course, they'll have to work out the details. And the government is saying that, for example, that, they have given land to various hospitals and various organizations on concessionary rates. For example, there are hospitals which were given land, like 40 years ago for just ₹1. So the government is saying that, we want you to implement our schemes because we gave you land on concessionary rates. So of course, it's all part of the controversy as well, that the government is insisting that, we want to bring more hospitals and we have given you land on concessionary rates. So you should, join us and, help us implement our schemes.
Okay, and you mentioned how there are already certain healthcare schemes in place in the state, right? And one of the strongest ones is the Chiranjeevi Health Insurance Scheme, under which the residents can get free treatment of up to 25 lakh rupees. And even apart from Chiranjeevi, there are a few other schemes as well, some of which give free medication and some ensure free medical tests. So why is the government pushing for this new RTH bill?
So what RTH does is it brings all these schemes under its umbrella, and to bring all these schemes together, and the core aim of RTH is to ensure immediate and qualitative health services for free as per the government. So that's the core aim. And another important reason for bringing this bill is that healthcare has been close to the heart of Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot, and the flagship Chiranjeevi scheme, which is being provided by the government and also implemented through certain private hospitals. So there were lots of complaints about the implementation of the Chiranjeevi health scheme. In fact, during the debate on the bill in the assembly, Health Minister Prasadilal Meena said that despite having a Chiranjeevi card, the private hospitals sometimes ask patient for money, so to deposit in advance. So he said that, when there is a card, when your entire treatment is supposed to be cashless, why are the hospitals still insisting on a cash when they're already impaneled under Chiranjeevi? So it doesn't make sense for them to ask for money. And so he said that, the department was getting a lot of complaints, and they even made some private hospitals return such money to the patients and their families. So he said the government will act on, such hospitals once this bill is passed and, becomes an act. So if someone is found, or if a hospital or an institution is found in contravention of this law, then the penalty will be rupees 10,000 for the first violation and rupees 25,000 for each subsequent violation.
So that means the government will levy penalties on private hospitals under the Right to Health Bill if they ask for money from patients.
Yeah. And another reason for bringing this Right to Health bill is that in Rajasthan for the last 3 decades, we have been witnessing the Congress and BJP taking turns to rule the state. And there are always accusations and counter accusations that, they accuse each other of. They started some scheme, but the subsequent government, they stopped the scheme or altered it beyond recognition or renamed it. So, but then once all the schemes that are going on in Rajasthan are brought under this umbrella, then there'll be a sort of minimum services or the minimum level of free healthcare, which will be provided to the citizens of Rajasthan mandatorily. That, even if you have a different party ruling the state later this year, then they will still have to provide this basic facilities free of cost to the people of Rajasthan. And probably the last, also an important reason for bringing this bill is that CM Gehlot has spoken a lot on healthcare and how people were affected during COVID. So he has launched a lot of schemes and he has done a lot of work in the health sector. So this again was a very crucial part of his, like how he puts it, that, we have a Rajasthan model of public health. So Right to Health was again and is an important part of Rajasthan model of public health.
Right, and the bill has been widely criticized by the opposition BJP. Can you tell us why they're against this bill?
Yeah, so the main 2 objections were that in case of private facilities, only multi-specialty hospitals with at least 50 beds should be included. And the second issue was that there should be a single forum for complaints. So BJP MLA Kalicharan Saraf, who has been a health minister himself in the previous BJP government, he said that if a cardiac patient reaches an eye hospital, how will he get treatment? So he said that, of course, sometimes it requires a specialized care and you can't force an eye hospital to treat a cardiac patient. So that's why the BJP has been saying that, you should bring or impanel only multi-specialty private hospitals with 50 beds under the Right to Health bill. So for this, the government has said that all of this will be clarified in the rules which we will come up with now. As for the second point, the BJP has said that there are various forums where you can complain against the doctors. There is the Medical Council, there is the Consumer Court, there is Medical Protection Act. You can also complain against doctors to the Human Rights Commission. So their complaint was that, now you're adding one more forum for complaints against doctors. So these were the 2 or 3 main points where the BJP has been, attacking the bill.
Okay, and talking about doctors, Hamza, they have also been protesting against the bill. Could you talk about the issues they have been raising?
So when the bill was first tabled in the assembly in September last year, they had two major issues with it. First was that the clause of emergency treatment, they were saying that it is too vague. And the second issue was that bureaucrats and politicians are dominating the state and district health authorities, which will be constituted as part of the bill. Right. So these were the two main concerns. For this, the government has said that, of course, when the bill went to select committee, they defined the emergency clause in detail. And as for the second concern that bureaucrats and politicians are dominating the state and district health authorities, so there was a provision for inclusion of 2 members to be nominated by the state government in the state and district health authorities. So the government has replaced it with 2 members of the IMA itself, of Indian Medical Association. And as for their charge, as for the doctor's complaint, that you'll also have politicians in the district health authorities, the government removed a Zilla Parishad member and the 3 pradhans, which were supposed to be a part of the district health authorities. So they have been removed altogether from the list of members of the district health authority. So that was that. Now the IMA, Rajasthan and, the protesting doctors, of course, they want the complete rollback of the bill, but they have also been asking for certain clauses to be included in the bill. For example, one of the clauses is about 9 responsibilities and duties that the patients and caretakers should have towards the hospitals, towards the private hospitals, such as being respectful to providers, avoid crowding with patients, not to be abusive or with violent behavior, or timely meet financial responsibilities. Then another clause lists as many as 17 rights of healthcare providers, such as to be treated with respect by patients and the person attending the patient, to be duly informed when patients are seeking a second opinion, to get the tests done in-house or the nearest lab in case of emergency, and so on. So there was a time when they were demanding inclusion of these clauses, but now they are only demanding complete rollback of the bill.
Right, so initially the doctors had an issue with the emergency clause of the bill, which they thought was vague, and the government defined that. They also wanted their representatives to be included in the state and district health authorities instead of bureaucrats and politicians. Now the government addressed that as well. And then the doctors raised a list of demands which talks about the right of healthcare providers, like being treated with respect and that dues for treatments are cleared in a timely manner. And now they also want the bill to be rolled back. So the demands keep shifting and the protests are continuing. Hamza, has the government said anything about these shifting demands and the continuous protests by the doctors?
So according to the government officials say that this will increase transparency in the system and essentially gives more rights to the patients. And of course, when you are ensuring them or making them aware about their rights, then this will, of course, not sit well with the private hospitals. And that is what is happening. So they are protesting because you are giving the patients and their families more space to negotiate and, to have their way. Because rather than, hospitals having a complete say in how things go in a hospital, we are giving certain rights to patients so that, they are not unnecessarily charged a lot or that their rights are protected.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philipose, and written and produced by Utsa Sarmin and me, Rahel Philipose, with the help of Shashank Bhargava. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.